In 1582, hundreds of soldiers died near the Honnoji Temple in Kyoto, Japan, as flames engulfed the area around the ruined building. Inside the temple, a black samurai named Yasuke had an intense conversation with the Japanese Imperial Daimyo Oda Nobunaga. At that moment, Nobunaga resigned himself to his fate. Even so, Yasuke still hoped to avoid the enemy and live to continue fighting. Suddenly, Nobunaga plunged his sword into his own stomach, completing the seppuku ritual. Before doing so, he told Yasuke that all that remained for him was an honorable death. In his final moments, Nobunaga was accompanied by Yasuke. However, according to popular stories, Nobunaga also tasked Yasuke with returning his head to his son. Beyond his relationship with the famous warlord in Japan at that time, Yasuke became a barrier-breaking figure who demonstrated his ability to cross geographic, cultural, and language barriers, especially in 16th century Japan. So, who was Yasuke? How did he become a samurai in the Japanese Empire? In truth, not much is known about Yasuke's early life, as there are few records specifically about him. Some historians speculate that Yasuke was born in Mozambique, Ethiopia, or Nigeria. Thomas Lockley, one of the authors of African Samurai, The True Story of Yasuke, a legendary black warrior in feudal Japan, suggests that Yasuke may have been a slave and most likely was traded as a child. His confirmed period of residence in Japan spans about 3 years, from August 17, 1579 to June 21, 1582. According to information from a 17th century book titled The Chronicle of Lord Nobunaga, Yasuke is described as a young man aged 26 or 27 with a strong build, standing over 180 centimeters tall, having a good demeanor, and possessing extraordinary strength, surpassing that of 10 men. Yasuke first set foot in Japan alongside Italian Jesuit missionary Alessandro Valignano in 1579, having previously traveled from India. Valignano's group spent their first 2 years of residence in Japan, mainly in Kyushu. Yasuke was employed as a weapon because missionaries were not allowed to carry arms. Moreover, the Japanese Empire at that time was in the midst of a brutal civil war. The civil war began in 1467 with the collapse of the Ashikaga shogunate. This event led feudal lords to compete for control of the Japanese Empire. The clashes continued until the mid-1500s, prompting Nobunaga to consolidate power by uniting half of the empire under his cruel regime. It is not surprising, then, that the missionary Valignano needed a bodyguard for protection. In 1581, Valignano visited the capital city of Kyoto as an envoy and met with Oda Nobunaga. After meeting Nobunaga, Valignano sought permission from the warlord to leave the Japanese Empire. It is said that Yasuke accompanied Valignano's group as a servant. Upon seeing Yasuke, Nobunaga was fascinated by Yasuke's skin color, which he initially believed to be covered in black paint. The daimyo ordered Yasuke to be bathed, but his skin color remained unchanged. Afterward, Nobunaga held a welcome party for his guest, who soon officially joined him. By 1581, Nobunaga had employed thousands of samurai, and Yasuke was the first foreign-born soldier to join the ranks. He was part of the small group around Nobunaga, which may have numbered around 30 to 50 people. Moreover, he became the only black samurai in the daimyo's forces in the Japanese Empire. However, Yasuke was not the only African to appear in the Japanese Empire in the 16th century. At that time, many black people already worked as translators, soldiers, or entertainers in the Japanese Empire. According to author Thomas Lockley, Nobunaga was a powerful figure in the Japanese Empire, and few dared to challenge him. Therefore, his decision to employ Yasuke met no resistance. During the final months of the struggle to unify the feudal lords, Yasuke joined and trained with Nobunaga. Nobunaga had nearly completed his goal of consolidating control over the Japanese Empire. Unfortunately, his efforts were suddenly halted when one of his trusted generals, Akechi Mitsuhide, betrayed him. On June 21, 1582, Mitsuhide ambushed Nobunaga in Kyoto while they were traveling for a battle. Mitsuhide arrived with 13,000 troops under his command, while Nobunaga was accompanied by only about 30 people, including Yasuke. The imbalance in troop numbers allowed Mitsuhide's soldiers to slaughter most of the samurai in Nobunaga's entourage during the initial ambush. Eventually, Nobunaga, Yasuke, and a servant named Mori Ranmaru entered the temple, where Nobunaga performed the seppuku ritual. After beheading Nobunaga, Ranmaru also performed seppuku and asked Yasuke to behead him. Following the deaths of Nobunaga and Ranmaru, Yasuke fled the temple while carrying his lord's head. By protecting Nobunaga's remains, Yasuke denied Mitsuhide the opportunity to seize his enemy's head. Displaying an enemy's head was a way to build legitimacy and power in the Japanese Empire. To this day, the reasons behind Mitsuhide's betrayal of Nobunaga remain one of the great mysteries of Japanese history. Not much is known about Yasuke's fate after the ambush. According to Lockley, he was likely seriously wounded and captured as one of the last survivors of Nobunaga's inner circle. The last known record of Yasuke describes him being delivered to the Jesuit mission by Mitsuhide's soldiers, indicating that Mitsuhide did not execute Yasuke. Lockley speculates that Mitsuhide intentionally spared Yasuke to gain support from the Jesuit missionaries, as the general had no allies and only lasted a few days after defeating Nobunaga. On July 2, 1582, one of Nobunaga's followers, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, successfully defeated Mitsuhide at the Battle of Yamazaki. Hideyoshi then became the second great unifier of the Japanese Empire, uniting the entire empire by 1590. Despite the lack of concrete information, Yasuke's story has inspired modern popular culture. For example, in 1968, Japanese author Kurusu Yoshio published Kurosuke, a children's book telling Yasuke's story. Another children's book by Jamal Turner titled Yasuke, The Legend of the African Samurai also exists. Beyond books, a video game called Nioh, released in 2017, was inspired by Yasuke's story but set in the Sengoku period. In 2019, actor Chadwick Boseman, known for his role as Black Panther, signed on to portray Yasuke in a film that would tell the story of the Black Samurai's life. Sadly, Boseman passed away from colon cancer in August 2020, leaving the project's future uncertain. In April 2021, streaming service Netflix released a 6-episode anime version of Yasuke with actor Lakeith Stanfield voicing the character of Yasuke. Yoshiko Okuyama, a Japanese studies expert from the University of Hawaii, praised the Yasuke anime for featuring a black hero as the central character. Referring to the lack of racial diversity in anime, Okuyama pointed out that the portrayal of black characters in early animated titles was often degrading and showed them with exaggerated facial features. Okuyama added that although the Yasuke anime is a non-fiction genre, the story is fascinating and drawn from documented history about a real-life black samurai in 16th century Japan, which is not widely known even among the Japanese people themselves. Furthermore, Okuyama noted that Japanese anime production houses and American animated works have historically misrepresented black characters. She believes it is overdue for them to be placed in central roles with positive traits as drivers of the story, not just as close friends or even villains. Seeing how the story of the samurai Yasuke has inspired many people to create works of art reminds us that his tale is an example of an interesting and unexpected transnational encounter in the history of black people in the Japanese Empire.